myself, my name is Lavanya. If it's very difficult for you to pronounce, you can call me Lavi. Basically, I was an professional accountant. I was working for a number of years. Then I realized something very important when I was first starting my career, which is what I studied in my college or in my professional paper. It wasn't exactly the same when I went into job. So it was a very huge gap for me. So for me, I was like, okay, what should I do? Who should I talk to? And things like that. Then I realized, okay, it's about now it's my turn to actually go and find out the answers. I cannot be just asking questions. So that's when I actually started, come up with this YouTube channel itself, Crazy Gig, which is to bridge the gap between what you study in your college and everything like that, and what you actually apply at your workplace. But the thing is, this YouTube channel is very much focused in Malaysian students and Malaysian syllabus because there's tax into it. So that's why I'm focusing on Malaysian crowd. But since accounting and audit is more towards international standards, so then all the students can understand that. So that is what I'm actually focusing on in the Crazy Geek YouTube channel. So while I was doing my YouTube videos, in terms of, if you see my videos are not those like I'll be talking and things like that. It's not that. It's more towards animations, which means let's take a topic, let's say double entries in accounting. Then I'm going to show how is this being applicable in a software, or is it applicable in a workplace kind of thing. So I use animation and then something different because I wanted to do something different than what usual people will do. And accounting should be fun. It shouldn't be boring because I felt it fun. I felt it fun, but not many people agree with me. They said accounting is very, very boring. So I said, no, it is not boring. Maybe you just haven't seen it yet. So I thought, okay, why don't we share this and make a lot more students to understand it better at a very younger age. It's not only after you come up with a college, then only you get the experiences and things like that. So that is why I started with the YouTube channel. Along the way, I realized that it was just the animation and the videos, but there were no real people, sharing their experiences. So that's where I came about with this interview session with students as well as professionals. So that's where each of them from all over the world came in. Like, thank you so much for everyone who actually said they want to give an interview, like from India, from UK, a lot of people from all around the world. They actually say they want to give an interview session here. So thank you so much, Mr. James, for coming on board for today's session. I'm just so excited to have this session with you. And before going into the session, I think it would be a very great pleasure if you can share about yourself and what you have been doing for many years, starting from maybe your college or things like that. Mm-hmm. I know it's going to be a bit long introduction, but yeah.
I'll try and make it as short as possible, Lavinia. Is accounting has always been there for me. It's always been in my blood. So I started studying accounting whenever I was 16. So from really, really early. Then I went and done a degree in accounting. Mm-hmm. I done it locally in a local university. Then I went to another local university and done a master's degree in advanced accounting. So that was my academic journey. And like you quite rightly said, then I went into the world of work in 2003. And there was a massive, massive gap there. So the first 6 to 12 months in work, you're going, what's going on? I don't know what I'm doing at all. And yet I have a master's degree in this, and I've got a first class honors degree in this. And yet I don't know what I'm doing. So I completely understand that. And we'll talk maybe about that a bit more in a bit. So I joined a firm called Grant Thornton, one of the sort of bigger firms in the world. I joined them in 2003 as a trainee chartered accountant. And I experienced so much stuff in that 3 years. And then in the middle of those 3 years, I became a chartered accountant with Chartered Accountants Ireland. So then I done my professional exams as well. So qualified as a chartered accountant and came out of contract in 2006. And I then went, what am I going to do now? I have got this world-class professional qualification and I don't know what to do. So at that time, the partners in our office thought I was quite good at auditing. And they said, okay, James, you've got all the skills to become a partner in the business. So there could be a role for you in the next 5 years. So I got promoted very, very quick. But that was another experience gap for me. So I literally just qualified, and then I went into senior management overnight, and it was a huge jump. So again, I went into another 18 months of a massive learning curve. And it was literally, there you go, James, there's everything, away, go and find out how to do that yourself. And yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was challenging. I became staff manager of 17 trainee accountants. For a short period of time in my latter days, I was actually head of the audit department. And it was a tough number of years, but I learned so much. I then left Grant Thornton. I left audit about 10 years ago, and I went into industry and became a financial controller of an alcoholic beverage. So in this part of the world, it's actually quite well known. It's called WKD. It's very well known here. And I became financial controller. So I left audit and I went into another environment that again was completely different. So being in industry is a completely different experience from being in audit. So done that for 2 years. I learned so much from that. My boss actually was brilliant. But then I got quite, the phrase we'd say here is burnt out here. We had burnout. I was working massive hours for about 12 or 14 years at this stage. And I was really, I'm really tired here. So I went to a government position, which had more of a flexible lifestyle. So I could leave at 3:30 in the afternoon, or the next day I could start work at 9:30 or 10. You had that flexibility. And that was great actually, because Lovey, it gave me the scope and it gave me the bandwidth in my mind to think about other ideas of what I actually wanted to do. So what I tend to see with my own clients is that because you're going through the process and studying and working long hours and being under so much pressure, you can't actually think what you want to do yourself.
Correct.
Because it's always for someone else. It's always for your boss, or it's always for the university, or it's always your professional exams. So I was very lucky then that I got that scope to think, okay, James, what am I going to do? And I woke up one night in the middle of the night with an idea. And that was to coach people through their exams. Now, not teach, but to coach, which is a different thing. Because the things that I found from my own experiences and from my students' experiences was that their mindset wasn't right, was that they didn't know how to study or how to learn or have a study plan. They didn't know, they learned all this stuff, but didn't have the proper exam technique to execute on the big day. And they also did not have someone to make them accountable to what they were going to do. They said, I'm going to do all this work, and they ended up not doing it. So that's where I then became a coach. I wasn't going to teach the content, but I would have shared my experiences. And that's where my business started from. And so that was 4 years ago. I've coached over 200 people around the world. I have now expanded into career development. So I have a new course that's going to launch now at the end of June. So once you become qualified, I help you through those lessons. But then you can learn from my experiences at that stage. Whenever I went, what do I do next? So now I've got a career accelerator course for people to help them on that journey. So that's launching at the end of June. So it's been a fantastic journey. And in the middle of that, about 2 years ago, the local university that I'd done my master's in asked me back to become a part-time lecturer. So I've now, Lavinia, got this fantastic, flexible working lifestyle where I can work 3 hours. For example, yesterday, I worked for 3 hours, done my work, done my LinkedIn posts, went and took my father for a drive, went and cut the grass in the garden, went and read a book, and then maybe at 8:30 I'd done maybe another hour of work. And I can work whenever I want to work now. And that is such an unbelievable thing to say to people.
Yeah.
And I suppose one thing about the pandemic is
Mm-hmm.
we're all going to be able to do that now. Remote working, flexible working is now going to come
Correct.
to everyone.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
one thing I would say to people right up front. Think about what lifestyle you want,
Mm-hmm.
and then try and fit your study and your working life around the lifestyle that you want.
Thank you so much.
That's my short version of an introduction.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much that we can learn from you. One thing that I liked about what you're saying is actually you create your own reality. That's what actually you are telling here. Because if this what you want, you can actually change whatever you at your current situation are. So very much similar to my experience also, James. So I wanted flexibility. I wanted freedom in terms of whatever decision that I'm making. So one thing is also passion towards guiding students. That's what drive me until doing a YouTube channel and things like that. So yeah.
Because we're doing things that most people in the world won't do. So we're doing things very unusually to people. So we're putting our views and our reputation online for people to see, for the whole world to see.
Correct.
We're putting our credibility on the line and our reputations on the line for the whole world to see. Most people won't do that. So what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. Why? Because the goal is to help others, and that's the most important thing. Like I said, the job satisfaction that I've got, where someone has maybe failed an exam 3 times, they come to me and then they pass. That's unbelievable job satisfaction. And they become a qualified professional and then they get a job promotion. I've had that happen so many times. You're going, I remember a friend saying, and this is what you're doing too, we're actually changing the future. And I went, what? We're changing the future because if we hadn't helped, their direction in life would go somewhere completely different. So we're changing the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. I think it was a wonderful thing. It's very, I would say it's very happy to actually connect with the people who actually have very similar goals. It's not everyone has that goal together to, bring up the younger generation and get them to be better at a very young age itself. So, yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll go with my very first question for today's session, which is there a bridge of gap between what you studied when you were in college or in your professional levels and what you were actually working maybe in your commercial line or in your audit firm? Yeah, that's the very first question.
Absolutely, yeah, there's a huge gap. And I seen it at first hand from both angles. So as a student leaving college or leaving university and going into the world of work and going, what's happening here? And then whenever I was in senior management and recruiting graduates and going, why is university or why are the colleges not bridging that gap? So I've seen it from both angles. And there is a massive gap there, absolutely. Now, what I would say, Lavanya, is that both colleges, from my experience now, and the professional bodies are working really hard to try and bridge those gaps. They are trying to work. But the classic examples is maybe audit in the field that you teach in and the field that I used to work in. There's a massive difference between what an international auditing standard says and what you do in real life. So if you go for do a stock take, it's a very different experience than what you read in the book. So auditing is actually quite common sense. And sometimes the exams and the academics have made it more complicated than what it actually should be, in my opinion. So if you've got a bank reconciliation, you'll have pages of things in the international standards how to do it. What is a bank reconciliation? It's what the bank says, it's what your account says, and you want to audit in between.
Yeah.
You want to understand what happens in between. In fact, that's a reconciliation. Any reconciliation, and that's where the differences are. So yes, there's definitely huge gaps, and also as well in terms of the application of financial reporting standards. Tax maybe is more strict because you have to follow really rigidly the rules, where I think sometimes in auditing or in financial reporting, occasionally there could be a choice and there's judgment, so there's more difference there. But yes, absolutely, there is a massive difference. But I do believe that the institutes and the colleges are trying to do something about it now, with involving people like us.
Okay, so I think it leads to our second question, which is give us some examples in terms of how you are bridging the gap. Actually, you mentioned that earlier, but maybe you want to emphasize on maybe one or two things how you are bridging the gap between the students and the work.
So I've got, in my own business, I have the Career Accelerator, which will do that. Well, yeah, let's sort of do that. But the main bit in terms of leaving college and going into the world of work for the first time, Lavanya, is my role in the local university. And what I do is I do the skills modules. So I talk about, for example, Excel.
Okay.
Who has got IT skills whenever they leave college? Not too many. And then you're exposed to I didn't know Excel, or I never knew any of that until I went into the world of work. So these very practical things. Also, resilience. You need to develop a resilience whenever you leave college, whenever everything is great. And then you go into the world of work and you go into this pressure. You need to be quite resilient as well. So there's a lot of things that I talk about. Time management. So you're going from college where you've got all day to do whatever you want. Then you have to work all these hours and do all these things and timesheets and all this stuff. So there is loads of practical skills as well. So there's a practical gap as well as an academic gap. So this is where I go in and help in terms of, and what I also do is very much like what you're doing now with this interview, is that I'll bring in professionals into university. And also the other thing I would suggest, and maybe you would touch on this or maybe in another question, but I would definitely say to university students or college students to get an internship or a placement. Definitely.
Correct.
So go into, if you can get an internship over the summer months at the very least, but if you can get a placement for 6 months or a year in a professional firm, that's an unbelievable experience. It's something I didn't have. I didn't have that opportunity whenever I was in college. It wasn't available for me. I'm too old. It was a way back.
But they do have in Malaysia. They do have internship programs, but it's very short. It's very short, depending on the universities. Some of them they only get 3 months internship. Some of them get 6 to 8 months internship. So there is a huge difference. So they do have in Malaysia. I think now they are getting into it, slowly bridging the gap.
What I would say then, Lavanya, for your Malaysian students, is if you have any time off from college, is to go and volunteer, non-paid work, go into a professional environment and just get some exposure to that environment. Anytime you're off, and that will definitely help. It will ease the shock of going into a professional environment. Absolutely. Also, hopefully the place that you will go into will give you some good work experience that shows you in reality what actually happens. You know, okay, you will not be going and doing an audit on your own if you're just there for work experience, but maybe you'll be able to shadow someone who is and to see what they're doing. And so that's what I would say is get as much exposure as possible. The other thing is to engage with you, is to engage with me, is to engage with the people out there who all what we want to do is to help those people who have the previous experiences. I'll tell you my first ever stock take, and this will not be in any book or any academic book, was in a freezer at minus 18 degrees. They'll not tell you that in the book. And I was told my tip was do not bring a pen because the pen would freeze. I had to use a pencil for the stock take.
Wow.
I was in a freezer counting fish. They don't tell you that.
I could imagine that. But that's very, very interesting. That's
Yeah,
very
no,
interesting.
I've had a lot of experiences in audit that was really, really good. I've seen so many things, but it's all about gaining that exposure. It definitely is.
Okay, so I think that was the second question. Thank you so much, James. Now let's go for the third one, which is if you had a chance for you to go back to your school or your college, what would be the one subject that you heartfully will, learn from your lecturers or tutors?
Very easy. Psychology.
Okay, why?
Psycho and understanding how your mind works. It's something that I thought was because we're accountants, because we're very, very, very logical in our thinking,
Yeah, correct.
generally speaking, given that we're very much left of brain, analytical, etc. We think, or I used to think, that the world goes like an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, this is great. Everything works to plan. And then whenever the spreadsheet deletes and something goes wrong, how do I deal with this? And it was something I really, really struggled with up until about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Whenever, even how to deal with personal things, because I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in life. Work is part of your life. So it's all life. So whenever something goes wrong, obviously personal experiences are going to impact your professional experiences.
Correct.
So I didn't know how to cope. So if I knew back then, so I then had to find out, hence all the books. And this then comes into my coaching. So I talk about a lot about psychology, a lot about how the mind works, how to install a really strong mindset to help you pass your exams or to grow your career. That's what I would have done back in school, psychology. And I would say to people, go and try and understand a little more about how your mind actually works and how you can actually become more resilient whenever times get tough.
Thank you so
Definitely do
much,
that.
Jim. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think I am someone who also loves to learn a lot about mindset. From my experience, I didn't learn a lot from books or from, yeah, it wasn't about books, but then I went for this awareness based program in
Yeah.
Malaysia. There's this person called Miss Valsala Krishnan. She was the one who actually is the trainer of the program. So it's actually to follow your heart, make decision, follow your heart, then get your mind to do that. So that is what she was doing that. It's actually through that program, that awareness based program, is where I actually knew that I really, really love teaching. And now it's my mind to figure it out how to get it done. So she actually taught me how the mind works. She actually gave me a practical way of how to really, when situation comes by very tough, very difficult situation, at the moment you feel there is no choices, but actually you do have choices. So that kind of practical experiences, I was working with her very closely, like how you are doing, a career coach, very closely with the student and things like that. So she was very closely working with me, and from that's where I actually realized, okay, this is something very fun because you can do anything with your mind. So why don't you want to use this for the betterment of the society? So especially definitely if it's exam is your goal, then use that for your exams. Use your mind how to achieve that goals. So one of the things that I also teach my students, how to set your end goals properly and focus on it so that you achieve what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What I also tell my students, Lavanya, is that now your mind is the most powerful thing you have, but also it can work against you. So the way you'll see this in the students, I can't pass exams. I can't do this.
Correct.
Now, the way I say this is that there's a little monkey working the controls in your mind, right? And it tends to go crazy sometimes. Why? And it tells you the lies that you can't pass. Why? Because it's the defense mechanism in your mind. It's doing its job. So your mind knows that you're going to go outside the comfort zone. There's the potential for you to get hurt with doing an exam. It's really hard, so it will try and talk you out of not doing it. You probably experienced that. Your mind is great, and it's this little monkey working the controls, going, "You're not going to do it." Now, how to counteract that? And you've mentioned this very about your heart, but I'll go another area as well.
Okay.
Your gut reaction.
Mm-hmm.
You know that butterfly feeling you get in your stomach sometimes?
Correct.
That is never wrong.
Mm.
So they do neuroscience, or the scientists have now proven that there's neurons. The neurons in your brain, there's similar neurons in your gut. So your gut can think. And that's where your gut reaction comes in, the gut instinct. There's never wrong. Your brain is sometimes wrong because it's telling you lies to protect you. Your gut is never wrong. So try and listen to the gut sometimes, or try and understand that feeling, and take action on that.
So what you're trying to say is, James, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the feeling and the instinct that you have. Like
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
That us accountants overthink, we overanalyze, and we go, no, our gut's wrong. That doesn't, that feeling that we're feeling, I'm going to ignore that because my brain is saying it's this. But sometimes your brain tells you the lie. You always go with your gut sometimes as well. Have you ever went into a scenario where you felt something, you went against the feeling, but yet the result ended up wrong?
Yes, God.
Because you ignored the way you felt.
Many times.
So always think,
Yeah.
always, your gut is very, very wise, very wise.
Okay, thank you, James, for sharing that. Let's go to our next question, which is, how do we be creative at work if our work itself is a very monotonous and a boring work? Every single day we are doing the same thing. So what would be your advice?
Okay. My advice is to ask, and I call the person the stakeholder, not necessarily the boss, because your stakeholder could be anyone. So if you're in a job that is really boring, or is getting mundane, or you're doing the same thing, the way, Lavanya, you get noticed in a career is you have to add value to your stakeholders. Okay. Now, value comes in many different things, and you've got a lot of stakeholders. Now, say, for example, that your main stakeholder is your line manager. Now, if you're getting bored with something, I would suggest go to your line manager and ask, is there any additional tasks? But most importantly, is there any task that you can work on to make it better? And then you go and understand how to make it better. That's where you add value. How you also add value is you make your stakeholders' life easier. You make your boss's life easier. So if you are bored, go to your boss, ask to work on a process or a document or on something that will add value. That will make it more fun and will also make you noticed in your job, which will help you get your career up. So that's what I say. You have to go and talk to other people. Don't be sitting on your chair going, I'm bored, I'm just going to sit here. You need to go and talk and engage with others.
So the communication is what you are meaning here. Just be truthful with whatever you are feeling. Talk to your superior or anyone above you and get things excited in your job. Okay.
Absolutely. There's plenty of things. Whenever I was a boss, there was lots of stuff I would have given to my staff.
Okay, James. Let's go to our next question, which is, what are your views for our current education system? Okay, it can be in your country. And what are the few measures that you are taking for the betterment of the education itself?
Okay. Education system is okay. It's adequate. It's not fantastic, but it's adequate.
Okay.
And most education systems around the world now are probably still based on the Industrial Revolution model, where the excellence of education is in the academic element, not necessarily the practical element. So that gap that we're talking about, what I believe and what I think the university that I'm working for is doing is getting more practical experts in, like me. Whenever I was discussing views and my thoughts, they really loved some of my ideas because I was coming from a very practical standpoint. So what the education system needs to do is to get more buy-in or get more influence from the private sector and from those industry experts and from accounting experts and accounting professionals and the institutes to work hand in hand. I'm starting to see that a lot more. So essentially what university used to be was, we want you to get a PhD and become a professor because that is the pinnacle of academic excellence. Whereas in reality, what we should be doing is getting students ready for the world of work. And that's where the gap is, what we spoke about previously. That's where I think education is starting to happen. It's quite slow though. It's quite a slow transition. But I do think, believe it or not, COVID and the whole pandemic we're in will speed that up.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the demands from employers are now so much more. We need to get people hitting the ground running from the world of work. So I think that progress will start to accelerate now. They're talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. This is the new world of working that's coming now. So this progression will start to come. That gap between academia and the professional working life will start to narrow now, and the education system will have to adopt these practices.
Thank you so much, James. I think you just have a lot of experiences and stories to share with us. But I think I'll go for my very last question before we end this session. So my last question here is, share with us your one mistake that you made when you were a student back in college or school, which the adult you now would want to change at that point of time.
There's so many.
Just pick one, James.
I worried too much.
Okay.
I worried too much whenever I was young. And I don't know why. I was very I still am. Again, I'll go back to it. The trait of a stereotypical accountant is that we tend to be very perfectionist in nature.
Correct.
We tend to be, everything has to be 100%. But very, very, very rarely do we get anything 100%. So before I really learned about myself, whenever I was younger, I used to be very harsh on myself if I didn't get that perfection. So the one thing I would say now to students, don't be worrying about it. Remember, your 80% is as good as someone else's perfection, because we generally work to a very high level. Accounting students, accounting professionals, we generally work to a high level anyway. So that's what I'd say. Your 80% is someone else's perfection. So don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you so much, James. I think that's all I have for today. So do you have any last words you want to share with the audience itself? So here audiences will be all around the world, students, employees, interns, fresh graduates. So any last words do you want to say to them?
There's the good old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Have you ever heard of that saying?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe that now. It's about who knows you. So it's not what you know, it's not even who you know, it's who knows about you. So what my last bit of advice to everyone out there is, make yourself visible. Go on LinkedIn, engage with people, interact, have conversations, because you do not know what opportunities come from this. I didn't think that James from a small village in the north of Ireland here is going to be interviewed by a great person from Malaysia. You know, it's these opportunities that come. So go, folks, make yourself visible, make yourself known, and you just don't know what opportunities come from that.
Thank you so much, James. I am not a very great person from Malaysia, but I am very, very honored to actually interview you because I was very recently only being visible in LinkedIn. But then I met very wonderful people all around the world. They are willing to help. It was just all in my mind that I cannot go and connect because they are so, they are so famous. I don't think so they will even accept my invitation. That was all in my mind. And then when it started to happen, I realized that no, it was just a lie to myself. So
we're all the same. No matter where we come from, no matter who we are, I believe, in my opinion, every person is exactly the same. There's only two people on this world that I will put on a pedestal above everyone else, and that's my mother and my father. No one, everybody else is the same.
Okay, thank you so much, James. I had a great time
Indeed, so
interviewing
thank
you.
you very much.
I hope you are safe and see you soon. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.